What would you do if the person you invited to your family dinner table, the man you trusted around your children, the one you called family, turned out to be your family's executioner? Picture this. July 29th, 2025. A quiet neighborhood in Tennessee. A stranger finds a 7-month-old baby girl abandoned on their lawn, crying under the scorching summer heat. No note, no explanation, just a helpless infant left to the mercy of strangers. But here's what makes this discovery absolutely chilling. Just hours before, that baby's entire family had been systematically murdered. 4 generations, gone, wiped out in what investigators would call a targeted attack. Have you ever welcomed someone into your family, only to discover they weren't who you thought they were? Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you'd leave your children alone with them? Most of us have. And that's exactly what makes this case so terrifying. The Drummond family did everything right. They opened their hearts, their home, their lives, to someone they believed was family. They posted about him on social media, calling him amazing. They defended him when others questioned his past. They stood by him when the world turned against him. And he repaid their love with unspeakable violence. But here's the haunting question that's keeping investigators awake at night. If Austin Drummond was capable of murdering 4 innocent people in cold blood, why did he spare the baby? What drove a man to destroy an entire family, except for one innocent life? Before we dive deeper into this nightmare, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because the lessons we learn from this case could literally save your life or the life of someone you love. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever misjudged someone's character? Drop that in the comments below. The answers to these questions will shock you. The betrayal will haunt you, and the warning signs we missed, they're hiding in plain sight in families across America right now. Before we dive into the darkness, we need to understand the light that was extinguished. Because these weren't just statistics. These weren't just names in a police report. These were real people, with real dreams, real hopes, and real love for each other. Courtney Rose, 38 years old. The matriarch, the protector, a woman who had spent her entire adult life building a safe haven for her family. Friends described her as the type of person who would give you the shirt off her back, who would fight tooth and nail for the people she loved. She was the glue that held this multi-generational household together. Adriana Williams, just 20 years old, a young mother trying to build a life for herself and her 7-month-old daughter. At an age when most people are worried about college exams and weekend plans, Adriana was focused on creating stability for her baby girl. She had her whole life ahead of her. First steps to witness, first words to hear, birthdays to celebrate, graduations to attend. James Wilson, 21. Adriana's boyfriend and a devoted father figure to her daughter. He wasn't the biological father, but love doesn't require DNA. James had stepped up, choosing to be part of this little family unit. He was building something beautiful. A blended family filled with love and commitment. And then there was Braden Williams, just 15 years old. A teenager with dreams, ambitions, and that whole beautiful, complicated mess of adolescence ahead of him. 15. Think about that for a moment. He should have been worried about homework, first loves, driving tests, prom. Instead, his life was cut short by someone his family trusted. 4 generations living under one roof. 4 generations supporting each other, loving each other, creating memories together. The kind of tight-knit family that many people dream of having. But there was a 5th person in this house. Someone who had been welcomed with open arms. Someone who had been trusted with their most precious possessions, their children, their safety, their lives. Have you ever had someone in your life who felt like family, even though they weren't blood-related? Someone you trusted completely. That's exactly what Austin Drummond had become to this family. And that trust, it would prove to be fatal. The 7-month-old baby girl, the sole survivor, represents something profound in this story. She's not just a survivor, she's a witness to the power of selective mercy. She's proof that even in the darkest moments of human evil, something stayed Austin Drummond's hand when it came to true innocence. But why her? Why only her? This family had no idea that they were living with a predator. They had no idea that their kindness, their trust, their love was being weaponized against them. They went to bed on July 28th believing they were safe. surrounded by people who cared about them. They were wrong. Austin Drummond wasn't a stranger who broke into this family's home. He wasn't a random criminal who chose them at random. He was someone they knew, someone they trusted, someone they had welcomed into their most intimate family moments. But here's what they didn't know. Austin Drummond had been living a double life for years. In 2013, Drummond was convicted of aggravated robbery, a violent felony that should have been a massive red flag to anyone considering bringing him into their family circle. But people change, right? People deserve second chances, right? That's what this family believed. That's what most good-hearted people want to believe. However, Drummond's time in prison revealed something deeply disturbing about his character. While behind bars, he wasn't using his time for reflection or rehabilitation. Instead, he was living like a king. Investigators discovered that Drummond had access to luxury items that most free citizens couldn't afford: a laptop computer, premium tobacco, high-end commissary items. How does an inmate get these things? Through corruption, through manipulation, through building networks of people willing to break rules for him. This wasn't just about having nice things in prison. This was about power. This was about control. This was about a man who believed the rules didn't apply to him, who could convince others to risk their careers, their freedom, their integrity, to serve his desires. And one of those people was Corrections Officer Caitlin Speed. Their relationship began in the most inappropriate way possible. A prison employee becoming romantically involved with an inmate. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was an ongoing relationship that resulted in Speed becoming pregnant with Drummond's child. Think about that for a moment. A corrections officer, someone sworn to maintain security and order, was having an intimate relationship with a convicted violent felon. She was smuggling items to him. She was compromising the safety of her colleagues, other inmates, and the entire facility. When the relationship was discovered, Speed was terminated. Her career was over. Her professional reputation was destroyed. But for some reason, the family decided to support this relationship. On Facebook, family members posted about Drummond. He has literally been nothing short of amazing to us. They defended him. They embraced him. They made him practically family. But here's what the family didn't see coming. Austin Drummond wasn't grateful for their acceptance. He wasn't humbled by their forgiveness. He was entitled. He was resentful. And he was about to show them exactly what kind of man they had really welcomed into their home. Have you ever known someone who seemed charming on the surface but had this underlying sense of entitlement? Someone who expected the world to bend to their will. That was Austin Drummond. The family saw his smooth talk and his relationship with Caitlin. They saw what he wanted them to see. They missed the warning signs that were screaming from his past: violence, manipulation, corruption, and an absolute disregard for boundaries and rules. But pattern recognition is everything in true crime. And Austin Drummond's pattern was crystal clear. He was a man who took what he wanted, regardless of the consequences to others. If this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button, because we're just getting started, and the worst is yet to come. The relationship between Austin Drummond and Caitlin Speed wasn't just inappropriate, it was catastrophic. And the fallout from their romance would create the perfect storm that led to 4 innocent deaths. When Caitlin Speed was fired from her position as a corrections officer, it wasn't just a job loss, it was a public humiliation. Her career in law enforcement was over. Her professional reputation was destroyed. Her financial security vanished overnight. And why? Because she had fallen for a convicted felon who had manipulated her into risking everything. But here's where the story gets even more complicated. Speed was pregnant with Drummond's child. This wasn't just about a relationship anymore. This was about a baby, about family, about the future. And the Drummond family, the victim's family, had strong feelings about this relationship. They didn't approve. Can you imagine being in Caitlin's position? Pregnant, unemployed, publicly shamed and facing disapproval from the people who are supposed to be your support system. The stress, the isolation, the desperation, it would be overwhelming for anyone. But can you also imagine being in the family's position? They had welcomed Austin into their home, defended him against critics, supported his relationship with Caitlin. And now they were watching this relationship destroy lives and bring chaos into their peaceful household. Family dynamics are complicated under the best circumstances. Add a convicted felon, a ruined career, an unplanned pregnancy, and mounting resentment, and you have a powder keg waiting to explode. Austin Drummond was less than a year out of prison. He was supposed to be grateful for his freedom, grateful for acceptance, grateful for a second chance. Instead, he was facing criticism, disapproval, and resistance from the very people who had shown him kindness. For a man with his sense of entitlement, this rejection wasn't just disappointing, it was infuriating. Professional boundaries exist for critical reasons. They protect everyone involved. When Caitlin Speed crossed those boundaries, she didn't just risk her career, she put her entire family in danger, because she had brought a predator into their circle. And now that predator felt cornered, the family's disapproval of the relationship wasn't cruelty, it was common sense. They could see what was happening. They could see the destruction this relationship was causing. They were trying to protect their family from further damage. But Austin Drummond didn't see it that way. He saw disrespect. He saw ingratitude. He saw people who had forgotten their place, who had forgotten who was really in control. And on July 29, 2025, he decided to remind them. The tragic irony is that this family's disapproval came from a place of love. They wanted what was best for Caitlin and her unborn child. They wanted stability, security, a healthy relationship. They wanted to protect their family from the chaos that seemed to follow Austin Drummond wherever he went. Instead, their disapproval became their death sentence. This is one of the most painful lessons in this entire case. Sometimes trying to protect the people you love can make you a target. Sometimes standing up for what's right can cost you everything. But here's what we have to remember. The family's disapproval didn't cause these murders. Austin Drummond's choice to commit violence caused these murders. The family was exercising their right to have opinions, to set boundaries, to protect their household. Austin Drummond was the one who chose murder as his response to rejection. July 29, 2025, started like any other summer day in Lake County, Tennessee. Families were making breakfast, kids were sleeping in during summer vacation, and life was moving at its normal, peaceful pace. But inside one household, Austin Drummond was making a decision that would destroy everything. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation would later call it a targeted attack. This wasn't random violence. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This wasn't a moment of passion or a single bad decision. This was systematic. This was planned. This was personal. 4 people were murdered in that house. 4 people who had trusted Austin Drummond. 4 people who had welcomed him as family. 4 people who went to sleep the night before believing they were safe. Courtney Rose, 38, shot dead. Adriana Williams, 20, shot dead. James Wilson, 21, shot dead. Braden Williams, 15, shot dead. 4 lives, 4 futures, 4 human beings, with hopes and dreams, and people who loved them, gone in moments. But here's where this case takes an absolutely puzzling turn. Austin Drummond took the 7-month-old baby with him when he left. Think about that. He had just murdered 4 people in cold blood. He was covered in their blood. He was running for his life. He could have left the baby in the house to be discovered with the bodies. He could have, but I can't even say it. The fact that he didn't is the only mercy in this entire nightmare. Instead, Austin Drummond drove 40 miles, with a crying baby in his car. 40 miles, to think about what he had done. 40 miles, to change his mind, to turn around, to choose a different path. But he didn't turn around. He didn't change his mind about the murders. He did, however, make one choice that investigators are still struggling to understand. He left that baby girl on a stranger's lawn, alive, unharmed, safe. Why? According to TBI Director David Rausch, this decision showed compassion. But how do you reconcile compassion with quadruple murder? How do you show mercy to a baby while showing none to her family? Maybe it was because she was truly innocent. Maybe it was because she was too young to judge him, to disapprove of him, to reject him. Maybe it was because she represented the one pure thing in a situation that had become completely corrupted. Or maybe, in that moment, Austin Drummond saw his own child in that baby's face. Maybe he thought about Caitlin, pregnant with his baby, and couldn't bring himself to make another child an orphan. We may never know the answer, but what we do know is this: that baby girl is alive today because Austin Drummond made a choice. In the midst of unfathomable evil, he chose to spare one innocent life. The scene at the house was devastating. 4 bodies, blood everywhere, a family completely destroyed by someone they had trusted completely. The neighbors who found the baby were heroes. They immediately called 911, got her medical attention, and ensured she was safe. In their kindness to a stranger's child, they showed the exact opposite of what Austin Drummond had shown to his surrogate family. By the time police arrived at the murder scene, Austin Drummond was long gone. He had a head start, a vehicle, and clearly a plan. The manhunt was about to begin. But first, investigators had to process one of the most heartbreaking crime scenes in Tennessee history. 4 innocent people, murdered by someone they loved. A baby saved by someone who had shown no mercy to anyone else. The contradiction is staggering. The questions are haunting, and the search for Austin Drummond was just beginning. This family welcomed a predator into their home because they believed in redemption, in second chances, in the power of love, to change people. They were good people who made a fatal mistake. They trusted someone who wasn't worthy of their trust. Can you imagine living in fear, knowing a quadruple murderer was hiding in your community? Because that's exactly what happened next. When news of the quadruple murder broke, the entire community was gripped by terror. This wasn't just about 4 tragic deaths. This was about a killer on the loose, armed, and extremely dangerous. Austin Drummond was driving a white Audi A3, and investigators quickly determined that the vehicle had sustained damage during his escape. He was desperate, cornered, and had already proven he was willing to kill. For 7 days, Austin Drummond managed to evade capture. 7 days of communities on edge. 7 days of residents checking their locks twice before bed. 7 days of parents keeping their children indoors. 7 days of terror. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, working with local law enforcement agencies across multiple counties, launched one of the most intensive manhunts in recent state history. They had helicopters in the air, K9 units on the ground, and officers checking every possible hiding spot. Surveillance footage from Jackson, Tennessee, showed Drummond, armed and moving through the area. This wasn't just a man on the run, this was a predator with nothing left to lose. He had already murdered 4 people. What was to stop him from killing again? Law enforcement issued shelter-in-place orders for residents in areas where Drummond might be hiding. Schools increased security. Businesses closed early. The entire region was paralyzed by fear. A $30,000 reward was offered for information leading to Drummond's capture. Tips poured in from across the state. Every white Audi became suspicious. Every unusual noise in the woods could be the killer. Have you ever lived through something like this? When your entire community is hunting for a murderer who could be anywhere, could strike at any time, the psychological toll is enormous. Children have nightmares. Adults can't concentrate at work. Everyone becomes hyper-vigilant, scanning faces in crowds, checking shadows in parking lots. But Austin Drummond wasn't just running, he was being helped. During the manhunt, investigators discovered that Drummond had a network of people willing to assist him, even after they knew he had murdered 4 innocent people, including a 15-year-old boy. These weren't just passive supporters. These were active accomplices who were helping a child killer evade justice. Tanaka Brown, 29 years old, was charged with tampering with evidence. While 4 bodies were cooling in a morgue and a community lived in terror, Brown was actively helping Austin Drummond cover his tracks. Javante Thomas, 29, was already in jail on unrelated charges when the murders happened. But that didn't stop him from providing assistance to Drummond. Even from behind bars, he was helping a quadruple murderer stay free. And perhaps most shocking of all, Dira Sanders, just 23 years old, a young woman with her whole life ahead of her, who chose to throw it all away to help someone who had just murdered 4 people, including a teenager barely younger than herself. Think about that decision. Think about what it means to know that someone has just killed a 15-year-old boy and a 20-year-old mother, and to decide that this person deserves your help, your loyalty, your freedom. What kind of hold did Austin Drummond have over these people? What kind of manipulation? What kind of fear? What kind of misguided loyalty could convince three different people to risk their own freedom to help a child killer? This is one of the most disturbing aspects of this case. Evil is rarely a solo act. Austin Drummond didn't just destroy the lives of his four victims. He corrupted the people around him, turning them into accomplices, dragging them down into his darkness. For 7 days, while investigators worked around the clock, while a community lived in fear, while a 7-month-old baby girl was being cared for by strangers, Austin Drummond was being helped by people who knew exactly what he had done. These accomplices didn't just help a killer, they prolonged a community's terror. They extended the trauma. They chose loyalty to a murderer over justice for innocent victims. But on August 6th, the manhunt finally came to an end. Austin Drummond was found hiding in woods near Jackson, Tennessee. After a week of terror, after a week of community-wide fear, after a week of knowing a killer was on the loose, he was finally in custody. But the damage was done. 4 people were dead, a family was destroyed, a community was traumatized, and the questions remained. Why? How could someone they trusted do something so evil? The capture of Austin Drummond should have been the end of the story. Justice served, community safe, case closed. But as investigators dug deeper into how Drummond had managed to evade capture for 7 days, they uncovered something almost as disturbing as the murders themselves. A network of people who had chosen to help a child killer. Tanaka Brown, 29 years old. When police arrested her for tampering with evidence, they weren't just charging someone with a technical crime. They were charging someone who had looked at the aftermath of 4 murders, including the murder of a 15-year-old boy, and decided that the killer deserved protection. What evidence did she tamper with? What crucial information did she destroy or hide that could have led to Austin Drummond's capture sooner? How many extra days of community terror could have been prevented if she had simply done the right thing? Giovanni Thomas, 29, presents an even more bizarre element to this story. He was already in jail when the murders happened, already separated from society for other crimes. But somehow, even from behind bars, he managed to provide assistance to a quadruple murderer. Think about the logistics of that. Think about the phone calls, the messages, the coordination required for someone in jail to help someone on the run. This wasn't a momentary decision. This was ongoing assistance, planned and executed, while knowing that 4 innocent people were dead. And then there's Dara Sanders, just 23 years old. At an age when most people are building their careers, starting families, creating their futures, she chose to destroy her life to help someone who had just destroyed 4 other lives. What could Austin Drummond have possibly offered her that was worth throwing away her freedom? What kind of manipulation convinced a young woman with everything to live for that a quadruple murderer deserved her loyalty? These 3 accomplices represent one of the most disturbing patterns in criminal behavior: the corruption of others. Austin Drummond didn't just kill 4 people. He turned 3 others into criminals. He destroyed their lives too, just more slowly. This is how evil spreads. It's not just the direct violence. It's the way that violence corrupts everyone it touches. It's the way that loyalty to the wrong person can turn good people into accomplices. It's the way that fear, manipulation, and misguided love can make people choose criminals over victims. The choice these 3 made wasn't just wrong. It was evil. They knew that a 15-year-old boy was dead. They knew that a young mother would never see her daughter grow up. They knew that a family had been destroyed, and they chose to help the person responsible. These weren't split-second decisions made in panic or fear. These were calculated choices made over days, with full knowledge of what had happened, with complete understanding of the consequences. Tanaka Brown could have told police where to find Austin Drummond. Instead, she helped him hide. Giovanni Thomas could have refused to assist from his jail cell. Instead, he coordinated help for a killer. Dara Sanders could have walked away from the entire situation. Instead, she chose to become an accomplice to quadruple murder. Their choices extended the trauma for everyone. The victims' families had to wait longer for justice. The community had to live in fear for additional days. The 7-month-old survivor had to spend more time separated from any remaining family members who could care for her. All because 3 people decided that a quadruple murderer deserved their help more than his victims deserved justice. This is one of the most important lessons from this case. Evil doesn't just destroy its direct victims, it corrupts everyone around it. It turns friends into accomplices, lovers into co-conspirators, family members into enablers. When you choose to help someone who has committed evil acts, you don't just risk your own freedom, you become part of the evil itself. The corrupting influence of loyalty to the wrong people is something we all need to guard against. Because somewhere in your life, you might be faced with a choice: stand with what's right, or stand with someone you care about who has done something wrong. These 3 accomplices chose wrong, and now they'll spend years in prison, knowing that they helped a child killer evade justice, knowing that they prolonged a community's terror, knowing that they chose evil over good. Was it worth it? Ask them in their prison cells. August 6, 2025. After 7 days that felt like an eternity to a terrorized community, Austin Drummond's reign of terror finally came to an end. Law enforcement found him hiding in woods near Jackson, Tennessee. No dramatic shootout, no final standoff, just a coward hiding in the trees. Finally cornered after a week of running, the man who had shown no mercy to 4 innocent people was taken alive, unharmed, and given every protection under the law, protections he had denied his victims. When Austin Drummond made his first court appearance, he did so via video link from jail, facing charges that could cost him his life. The state of Tennessee announced they would be seeking the death penalty, the ultimate punishment for the ultimate crime. In that courtroom, connected by video, sat a man who had destroyed everything he touched. A family that had welcomed him was dead. A woman who had loved him was left pregnant and alone. Accomplices who had helped him were facing their own criminal charges. A community was traumatized. A baby girl was orphaned. All because Austin Drummond couldn't handle rejection. Tennessee's death row currently houses 47 inmates. If convicted and sentenced to death, Austin Drummond would join them in waiting for the state's ultimate judgment. But even if he receives the death penalty, it will be years, possibly decades before any sentence is carried out. The wheels of justice turn slowly, especially in capital cases. There will be appeals, delays, legal maneuvers. Austin Drummond will live in a cell, fed and housed at taxpayer expense, while his victims remain dead. But there's something important to understand about the death penalty in a case like this. It's not really about Austin Drummond anymore. It's about making a statement that some acts are so evil, so destructive, so unforgivable, that society's ultimate punishment is the only appropriate response. 4 innocent people are dead because Austin Drummond chose violence over communication, murder over conflict resolution, evil over good. A 7-month-old baby will grow up without her family because a man couldn't accept that his actions had consequences. The legal process will continue for years. Lawyers will argue about evidence, precedent, constitutional rights, but the fundamental truth of this case will never change. Austin Drummond murdered 4 people who trusted him, people who had shown him kindness, people who had welcomed him as family. There's no legal argument that can bring those victims back. There's no appeal that can undo the trauma inflicted on a community. There's no constitutional protection that can heal the hearts broken by this senseless violence. Justice in this case isn't just about punishing Austin Drummond. It's about honoring the memory of 4 innocent people. It's about acknowledging that their lives had value, that their deaths matter, that their killer must face the consequences of his choices. Courtney Rose, 38, will never see another birthday. Adriana Williams, 20, will never watch her daughter take her first steps. James Wilson, 21, will never build the family he dreamed of. Braden Williams, 15, will never graduate high school. These aren't just names in a court file. These are real losses, real tragedies, real people whose futures were stolen by someone they trusted. The death penalty debate will continue long after this case is resolved. People will argue about whether the state should have the power to take a life, whether capital punishment deters crime, whether justice can ever truly be served in cases like this. But for the families of these 4 victims, the debate is simple. Austin Drummond chose to play God with 4 innocent lives. Now society must decide what price he should pay for that choice. The legal system will determine Austin Drummond's fate, but history has already determined his legacy. He will be remembered as a man who repaid kindness with murder, trust with betrayal, love with violence. And that may be the most fitting punishment of all. The question that haunts everyone who hears this story is simple. Why? Why would someone murder 4 people who had shown him nothing but kindness? Why would Austin Drummond destroy the very family that had accepted him when the rest of the world had turned its back? The answer isn't simple, but it's terrifyingly human. Austin Drummond had spent years believing he was special. In prison, he lived like a king while other inmates struggled. He had luxury items, special privileges, and a corrections officer willing to risk her career for him. He was the center of attention, the object of desire, the man who could bend rules and break boundaries. When he was released from prison, he expected that same treatment to continue. He expected gratitude, respect, special consideration. He expected the family to be honored by his presence, thankful for his attention. Instead, he faced something he couldn't tolerate: accountability. The family's disapproval of his relationship with Caitlin wasn't personal, it was practical. They could see the destruction this relationship was causing. They could see Caitlin's life falling apart. They could see the chaos that seemed to follow Austin wherever he went. But Austin didn't see concern. He saw disrespect. He didn't see people trying to protect their family. He saw people who had forgotten their place. He didn't see legitimate criticism. He saw ingratitude from people who should have been grateful for his presence in their lives. This is the psychology of entitlement taken to its most extreme conclusion. Austin Drummond genuinely believed that this family owed him something: respect, support, unquestioning loyalty. When they failed to provide it, he felt justified in taking everything from them. Professional consequences didn't matter to him. The fact that Caitlin had lost her career because of their relationship wasn't his fault. It was the system's fault for having rules, for setting boundaries, for failing to recognize how special he was. Family disapproval didn't matter to him. The fact that his presence was causing stress and conflict wasn't a signal for him to step back. It was a sign that the family needed to be taught a lesson about respect. The timing is crucial here. Austin Drummond had been out of prison for less than a year. He was supposed to be grateful for his freedom, humble about his second chance, committed to building a better life. Instead, he was angry. Angry that people still saw him as a criminal. Angry that his past followed him. Angry that the world wouldn't bend to his will the way it had in prison. This is a pattern we see in many violent criminals. They don't see themselves as the problem. Everyone else is the problem. Society is the problem. The rules are the problem. The people who hold them accountable are the problem. Austin Drummond couldn't accept that his choices had consequences. He couldn't accept that people had the right to disapprove of his behavior. He couldn't accept that being welcomed into a family came with expectations of respect and responsibility. So he decided to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Except they couldn't learn from it, because they were dead. This is the ultimate expression of toxic masculinity and criminal entitlement. When you can't control people with charm or manipulation, you control them with violence. When you can't earn respect, you demand it through fear. When you can't handle rejection, you eliminate the people rejecting you. Austin Drummond wasn't a victim of circumstance. He wasn't pushed to violence by impossible situations. He was a man who believed the world owed him something, and when the world failed to deliver, he took what he wanted by force. The family's disapproval was actually a sign of their love and wisdom. They were trying to protect everyone involved, including Austin and Caitlin, from a relationship that was clearly destructive. But Austin Drummond saw love as weakness, wisdom as disrespect, and protection as betrayal. And 4 innocent people paid the price for his twisted worldview. Have you ever known someone who always saw themselves as the victim, even when they were clearly the problem? Someone who blamed everyone else for the consequences of their own choices. That was Austin Drummond. And that's why this case is so terrifying, because there are Austin Drummonds in communities across America right now. People who feel entitled to respect they haven't earned, loyalty they don't deserve, and control they have no right to exercise. The question isn't just why Austin Drummond killed 4 innocent people. The question is, how do we recognize the Austin Drummonds in our own lives before they turn violent? As we reach the end of this heartbreaking story, we need to talk about the lessons that could save lives. Because the Austin Drummond case isn't just about one family's tragedy. It's about patterns of behavior that exist in communities across America. The most crucial lesson is this: past criminal behavior, especially violent criminal behavior, is the strongest predictor of future violence. Austin Drummond wasn't reformed by his time in prison. He wasn't humbled by his conviction. He wasn't grateful for his second chance. He was the same person who had committed armed robbery, just with better social skills and more resentment. When someone has a history of violence, especially when that violence involves weapons and victims, extreme caution isn't prejudice, it's survival. The second lesson involves professional boundaries. Caitlin Speed's relationship with Austin Drummond didn't just violate prison policy, it created a dangerous power dynamic that ultimately led to multiple deaths. Professional boundaries exist to protect everyone involved, and crossing them can have consequences far beyond job loss. When corrections officers, police officers, teachers, therapists, or anyone in a position of authority becomes romantically involved with someone under their supervision, they're not just risking their careers, they're potentially putting themselves and their families in danger. The third lesson is about recognizing entitlement in relationships. Austin Drummond expected unquestioning support from the family that had welcomed him. When they expressed concern about his relationship with Caitlin, he saw it as betrayal rather than legitimate family concern. Watch for people demand loyalty without earning it, can't handle criticism or feedback, see accountability as persecution, blame others for the consequences of their own choices, expect special treatment because of their circumstances. These aren't just personality quirks, they're warning signs of potentially dangerous thinking patterns. The fourth lesson involves family safety decisions. This family made their choice to welcome Austin Drummond based on compassion and belief in redemption. These are admirable qualities that make our communities better, but compassion must be balanced with wisdom, and redemption must be demonstrated through sustained behavioral change, not just words. Before welcoming someone with a violent criminal history into your home, especially around children, consider what specific steps have they taken toward rehabilitation. How do they handle conflict and criticism now? Are they taking responsibility for past actions, or blaming others? Do they respect boundaries and rules? Are they showing genuine change, or just saying the right words? The fifth lesson is about accomplice behavior. 3 people chose to help Austin Drummond after knowing he had committed quadruple murder. This wasn't loyalty, this was enabling evil. When someone you care about commits serious crimes, helping them evade justice doesn't show love, it shows a complete moral failure. True love sometimes means letting people face the consequences of their actions. True loyalty sometimes means refusing to support someone's destructive choices. But perhaps the most important lesson from this case is about the 7-month-old survivor. In the midst of unfathomable evil, Austin Drummond made one choice that preserved innocent life. This reminds us that even in our darkest moments, we still have choices. We can still choose mercy over cruelty, protection over destruction, love over hate. That baby girl represents hope. She represents the possibility that goodness can survive even the worst human evil. She represents the future that exists beyond this tragedy. As she grows up, she'll face questions about what happened to her family. She'll struggle with knowing that someone who was supposed to protect her family instead destroyed it. But she'll also know that even a killer couldn't bring himself to harm her. That somewhere in his twisted thinking, he recognized her innocence and chose to preserve it. This case reminds us that evil is real, that it can hide behind charming smiles and sad stories, that it can corrupt everyone it touches. But it also reminds us that goodness is real too, that communities come together to protect the innocent, that strangers will care for abandoned babies, that justice systems work to hold killers accountable. The families of Courtney Rose, Adriana Williams, James Wilson, and Braden Williams will never be the same. Their deaths leave holes that can never be filled, questions that can never be answered, futures that can never be realized. But their story can serve as a warning to other families. Their tragedy can help others recognize danger before it strikes. Their deaths can mean something if they help prevent other deaths. What warning signs do you think this family missed? Have you ever welcomed someone into your life who made you uncomfortable but you ignored those feelings? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience could help someone else recognize danger before it's too late. And don't forget to subscribe to True Crime Seat for more analysis that could save lives. Because the best way to honor victims of violence is to learn from their stories and use those lessons to protect others. Evil exists, but so does wisdom, so does community, so does the human capacity to learn, to grow, and to choose protection over violence, love over hate, life over death. Choose wisely. Your life and the lives of people you love may depend on it.